and welcome to the Dorton and Duckett Debate Podcast. This is the special edition of the Dorton and Duckett Debate Podcast where I dive into each and every MLB team this offseason, try to have a fan of that team come on the show and talk about the team. So this is a face that you have not seen before, but it is a voice that you have heard before. If you remember, early on in the Dorton and Duckett debate, Mr. Duckett had to take a bye week. He had to load manage, one could say, week 2 doing this. So I had Josh Milling joining us. So today, Josh Milling is joining us again today. So Josh, how's it going?
It's going good, Lucas. Just chilling in my dorm room like a loser on a Friday night. Got nothing else to do. So, but I'm happy I'm here, man. Let's talk some baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of good to have you on here, then. Maybe have you do something.
Yikes.
So we're going to go into it. So Josh is a Seattle Mariners fan. So the Seattle Mariners, there we go. He's got the little mini hat there. You must not have got the memo. Everybody else that has been on here has wore something with their team, a Lakers jersey and a hat from your high school.
Yeah.
But you do have the mini hat, so I guess we can count that.
Yeah, and I've got to lie, like I have like almost every other Seattle like sports team paraphernalia. I even have like a Sonic shirt. But like I left all my Mariners hats at my house. So great times. Good job. Good job.
Oh.
I'm playing well.
Oh, that's all right. Well, we'll take your word for it nonetheless, being a Seattle fan.
Yeah.
So what exactly made you be a Seattle fan? I know obviously you're kind of from the area. Was that kind of the main factor, or was there anything else that kind of was a deciding factor in that?
I think that was a big factor, of course, just like the local thing. That's the team I saw at the time. And also, too, like my grandma, she stayed with us for a bit before moving back to the Philippines. She's half Japanese, so she really liked Ichiro Suzuki. And so, like, I'd watch games with her. And I still remember, like, the day when Ichiro was traded to the Yankees and how she was very sad that he was off the Mariners. But it was still cool. Like, I was able to bond with my grandma and also my family. And also, strangely, my little brother, when he was, like, an infant, he'd cry whenever I'd watch anything else. But when baseball was on the TV, he wouldn't cry. He'd watch it. So,
really?
He becomes a baseball fan. And I'm a Mariners fan, despite all the losing and terribleness. So, I mean, I can't win them all. So, that's what I got.
Well, that's right. I mean, your Seahawks obviously have had some success. I will say the Seattle Supersonics.
Yikes. Hey, we're getting a hockey team, man.
That's right. You are the Kraken.
I mean, honestly, I'd be fine with the name, but now we're getting off topic, which is fine because the Mariners are so bad. But
hey, I'm a Colorado Rockies fan. I can relate with you in us being bad. So that's, I guess, one thing that we have in common here is both of our teams aren't very good.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But anyways, we can just get right into it here. So we're going to start with talking about last season. Last year, the Mariners finished 68-94 last place in the AL West. The Seattle Mariners typically, Josh, and correct me if I'm wrong, every year it seems like they always start out hot. The first month or so, April, a little bit into, maybe a little bit into May, they're one of the hottest teams in baseball. And then they go from here all the way to down here in just a matter of games. Why is that the issue? Like, what's the reason behind that?
Well, for the longest time, especially when we had Felix Hernandez in his prime, we had good pitching, but our hitting was just awful. And then finally, like, our hitting came around. We brought in Nelson Cruz. We brought in Robinson Cano. Kyle Seager was doing really good. We started hitting. But that's when Felix started to tail off and our pitching just went awful. So we could never have the best of both worlds. And then 2 years ago, we started out fantastic. We were killing it. People were talking about the Mariners as a potential World Series favorite because we were hitting well. Our pitching was great. But then our bullpen was bad. And that's what sunk us. So, like, great. Good job. We just can't put everything together. And I just think the biggest thing is that what's hurt us, thankfully, now we have new ownership. But the old ownership was a lot of cost cutting. And we would let good players go, or we'd sign players who we thought were good for cheaper. And they turned out to be bad. So It was just a mix of bad ownership and just unlucky play with our players. Not everyone hitting on all cylinders at the same time. So yeah, life as a Mariners fan.
Now, you guys did not too well, I guess, kind of a while ago now, gave a huge contract to Robinson Cano. Now, at the time, that looked like a pretty good deal. Obviously, he was having phenomenal years with the Yankees, arguably the best second baseman in baseball at the time, you could say.
Yeah.
And the Seattle Mariners normally are a team that, like kind of like you mentioned, they normally don't go out and spend a lot of money. They don't get the big name guys, and they go out there and they get a Robinson Cano. So, I don't know, you personally, did you like that move? And then maybe in comparison to the rest of Seattle and Washington, how did they feel about it? Maybe you both are the same.
Yeah. I felt overall the majority of Mariners fans are finally happy that we were trying to like actually go out and win, because we had like teams who were like okay, and we just need more talent, like more like top tier talent, and that's what we got with Cano, and he was great with us.
Yeah.
And also like that year I mentioned 2 years ago, we also had Gene Segura All Star, Nelson Cruz All Star, Mitch Haniger was an All Star. It was just great all around, but then it's just new ownership has come in. They've been willing to spend more. It's just that it's been a little too late, especially with like Felix Hernandez, as I said earlier, where he started just tailing off because his arm just wasn't what it used to be. So I was happy. Most of Seattle Mariner fans were happy, but man, that was just tough. Especially we got close a few times. Like I remember we finished like 2 games out one year, a game out another year. We had that year where we started out great. We were up like 5 on the Astros, and then we just collapsed. So, I mean, we've had great beginnings, and then we've just crashed and burned. And then at this point, I expect it. So,
Yeah, it is kind of disappointing when you go into a season knowing that you're probably going to play well and then kind of choke when it comes to the end of the year. That was the Rockies for so many times.
yeah.
So this last season, obviously, we kind of got a little sidetracked there, but was kind of like on the same track we were talking about. They started off really hot.
Yep.
They were playing really well and then dropped off, obviously, to finish in last place in the AL West. Now, is that kind of, a contributing factor from what you were talking about before, like the pitching just couldn't hold up, the hitting couldn't hold up, a little bit of both, one more thing than the other, or what do you think?
No, actually, last year was the first time I seen the Mariners like stick to one area, and I've mentioned how we've been like iffy on parts, and one of the biggest things with ownership and management in conjunction is that they were iffy on, do we want to go all in or do we want to start tanking? So they'd like make some moves to win, but then they wouldn't go all in. So that's why we were like so close, but we couldn't finish the deal. And last year we finally said, okay, we're going to tank. We let Cruz go to the Twins. We traded away Gene Segura to the Phillies. We traded away Cano, which was a great trade because we let the Mets like eat most of the contract, which was fantastic. And Felix, like, we realized, like, we tried to see if we could get one more good year out of him. As soon as we realized we didn't, he said he was injured, but from the talk I hear, he was injured, and we just didn't want to see him pitch, and we wanted to see the young guys. I got some stuff right here. Like, we were just trying to see what we got with players. Major League Baseball records: 67 players suited up on the Major League roster, 22 Major League debuts. We used 42 pitchers with 36 relievers used, which is also a record. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was kind of a year just to churn and see how it's going. And we also we had guys like Edwin Encarnacion and Jay Bruce and Mike Leake who did good for us, but then we just wanted them to trade, and we did. We didn't get like star prospects, but we got something back, which hopefully would work.
Right. Yeah.
Other younger guys here, I just got like, it's fun. Like J.P. Crawford at shortstop. He's just this fun guy with energy. He had one of the plays of the year where he had that, I don't know if you remember, it was an insane, like, almost like Derek Jeter-esque, like, jump throw, kind of like turn and fire to first. People used to go look it up. Kyle Seager is finally rounding back into his all-star form. We have Marco Gonzalez, who he's not afraid to say what's on his mind. He said some stuff like he's called out umpires for not taking themselves out of the game when they had a concussion. He's called out the Astros, which, I mean, everyone's calling out the Astros now. This guy, Tom Murphy, the catcher. He
Yeah.
was solid for us in a platoon with Omar Narvaez, and then Narvaez, like his offense was great, his defense was kind of bad, so we just traded him, and now it's looking like Murphy's going to be our opening day guy. And like a thing I was like looking at and really reading, like we were horrible against the Astros, we were horrible against the Yankees, we were horrible against the top tier, but against like real bottom feeders like the Tigers, the White Sox, the Pirates, and the Royals, we basically swept those teams. So even though we did take a step back, we're not as bad as like the bottom feeder teams. And then other young guys who did good. Kyle Lewis came up and in his first 10 games hit 6 home runs.
Yeah.
Justice Sheffield's pitcher kind of up and down, but he's looked pretty good. And then I just want to give a shout out to our manager, Scott Service, who he's worked on building a culture of winning and hard work, even though he knows that we're not going to be winning. And it's been good. So overall, I like where the Mariners are going right now. Like last season was, I mean, as expected. And like you mentioned, like how we got off to a hard start. We started 13-2, and some people were like, "Oh, let's trade for, or let's sign." I forgot the name, but the former Astros pitcher who was on the market for a while. Let's go sign him. Let's go sign Craig Kimbrell. I'm like, no, we need to lose more. And yeah. I think we ended with the 6th overall pick in the upcoming draft. So I mean, that's fine by me. So overall last season, I was expecting us to lose. We did, but it wasn't as horrible as like watching the Baltimore Orioles just like with no hope. So.
Yeah, no, that's true. The good thing with you guys is that, kind of like you mentioned, you have young guys. You know, you have guys that you like going out there to, you know, you like. I don't know how to say. I guess those ticket price guys. You know, the guys that you go just for the price of admission themselves.
Yeah.
A team like Baltimore, like you said, it's hard to find that guys because
yeah,
it really isn't. Not to roast the Orioles, it's just kind of how it is.
Yeah.
You know, Seattle, like you mentioned, they have exciting guys. They have young guys that are really solid. Mitch Haniger helped me out big time in my fantasy league this last season.
Yeah.
And one of the leagues that I was in. Great guy to have there. So that was going to kind of bring me to the next one. You kind of mentioned it already with Scott Servais, but is he a guy that obviously right now you guys are probably going to have some losing seasons, probably try and rebuild as best as you can. Do you want him to be your manager of the future, or do you think he's just kind of going to be a short-term guy until they start to get success?
I think, and this is kind of a horrible thing to say, but this is just like cold-blooded Mariners fan. Just straight facts. I think he's a really good bridge manager.
Yeah.
Help build a culture and everything. And maybe, he can stay and help with a contender. But I feel like it might be a thing where we might see a guy who is like a top tier manager who we can go and get. And not that Service is bad. Service is maybe like a solid B+ manager. But then if we do see that there's an A- manager, we go get him. Nothing against Service, great guy. And he's helped build the culture, but I don't know if he's like a top tier manager. Me personally, I'm fine with him. I like it. I like to see him stay here because I think he can become an A- manager, A manager. But I mean, we just haven't seen him yet with a team that can do that.
Right. And it's tough. And you bring up a good point too. Baseball is, and I mentioned it with Nick too, and maybe you can agree with me or disagree with me. I don't care. In my opinion, is a very individual sport in certain aspects of the game, as far as, nobody else is in the batter's box with you when you're hitting. Nobody else is on the pitcher's mound with you when you're pitching and in the field and such. But also it's the ultimate team game in the aspect of you can have the best player on your roster, but Mike Trout, for example, best player in baseball for how long, but the teams that are around him aren't very good, and he can't, he can see him on his back. Servais, I like him. Obviously, I don't know a whole lot about him. From what I do know, it does seem like he's going to be kind of like a bridge manager type guy. Personally, if I'm a Mariners fan, I would maybe in the Mariners organization, I would try and keep him just for the fact of he's kind of seen things at the bottom. He's seen how bad things are. And, obviously you can't blame him for having not a very good roster, because I'm sure probably has a little bit of a say, not a ginormous one in it. But, maybe try and keep them through these bad times now, and then in the future, who knows?
Yeah. And Service did sign back in 2018. He signed a contract extension. I don't remember like how long it was, but I think it's to keep him at least a little bit longer till we start having like where all these young guys come up and we have success. So maybe we'll see by then what the plan is. But for right now, I think he's a bridge manager, which isn't the worst thing.
No.
Um, but maybe if we can get like an A+ guy, we go get him. But we'll see.
Absolutely. No, that's a good point that you bring up. So last season, like you mentioned, did have some struggles. So this current off season, what exactly have the Mariners done to either get better at certain places or maybe get worse at certain places or kind of just staying stagnant?
That's a good question because I've heard literally nothing about the Mariners offseason because, like you said, the last point, we've just been stagnant, which I guess is fine because like we're not trying to win. We're not going to go sign a big free agent. We're not going to go do stuff. We did sign, I mentioned earlier, Marco Gonzalez to a 4-year, $30 million extension. I think the option for last year is a team option for 2025. He's a good number 3 pitcher. Like he was our ace last year just because he was our best pitcher. I think overall in the contract we got him on, that's a solid number 3 contract. We also got some guy Hirano from Arizona, pitcher. I think he's gonna be our setup guy. He's been decent, and then we got Wyan Chen from Miami. He's also okay. Yeah. Those are the kind of guys who I feel like we bring them in, and then they do good, and by the trade deadline we can flip them for something.
Right.
Another thing too is just with this offseason I've been watching, like you mentioned Mitch Haniger, and he did do good until he fouled a ball off his testicle, and he came back from it a little bit, but now he's like a bunch of other injuries have been stacking up. Something else popped up. I think it was like a hernia or something. So he might not be able to start opening day. So that's something to keep an eye on because he's not a young guy. He is 29 years old, and he's been good. He was an all-star. And I think that at his peak, he is like a solid all-star. Maybe not like an all-star starter, but at least making the all-star roster. So that's one to keep an eye on. And then just like seeing the young guys, like I mentioned, Kyle Lewis, our September call-up. We have other guys like Cal Raleigh is a catcher. He's been in Double-A, but he's been working with our young pitchers, and you know how his continuity is really important. He's worked with our young pitchers like Justin Dunn, George Kirby, and Logan Gilbert. So maybe if those pitchers come up, Cal Raleigh will just bump up himself. Evan White is an interesting one where he's our first baseman in the minor leagues, but then we signed him to a 6-year, $24 million extension. So he's locked up with us for a long time, super cheap. And he's supposed to be a really good first baseman on a 5-tool player. And then there's 2 guys who I really like. Jared Kelenic, great outfielder. He just tore through Single-A. He moved up to Double-A. We got him in the trade with the Mets. And then also there's Julio Rodriguez. And I like it because if you follow them on social media, well, Kelenic's not afraid to he had a website that was like jaredkelenic.com. And like one of the pictures was him just like with his shirt off with like his 8-pack or whatever. It's like, oh, okay. But he's not like a cocky guy. He's just super confident. And then Julio Rodriguez, I saw like immediately after the Nationals won the World Series, there was like all this stuff on social media. The Mariners are the only team to not make the World Series. Julio Rodriguez retweeted and said, "Not for long." I'm like, I like that winning attitude. And so those are some guys, hopefully bring them up as the season progresses. I mean, I know it's not fair for the players, but hopefully we can mess with their service time and keep them down there and keep them with us longer. And then, yeah, I think another big one is how, we just didn't do anything over this offseason, which really shows that we are all in on this tanking, which sucks as a Mariners fan, but I'm thankful that we're actually going one way or another.
Right. So has the management or upper management at all for Seattle, a lot of times with tanking, nobody is ever going to come out and say, yeah, we're tanking. They may give hints to it. They may say, oh, we're kind of looking for the future or something along the lines, basically a fancy way of saying tanking. So has the Seattle upper management kind of said, yeah, we're tanking, or is it just one of those things with, well, the moves that they're making and the moves that they aren't making, that's pretty much a guarantee that they are.
Yeah, so I have this quote here. This is from the Seattle Times. And I want to make sure I get it correctly because sometimes I've heard stuff and then I read it and then it's not exactly. So what our general manager Jerry Dipoto, he was asked like kind of like what the stuff about the season, and he came out and he said this is the quote: "We don't think we're likely to threaten for a playoff position this year. We will measure our success season based on the development of our young players." So that's as close as coming to say we're tanking.
Yeah.
And he said stuff like that for the past few years. Like they've said 2021, I think more 2022 should be the target year to like actually start going for it. Another quote here said, "We want to contend in a sustainable way. It's been our goal since we got here, and we have crafted a roster now that I think will allow that. It's not likely to start in 2020." So again, like you said, he didn't directly come out and said we're tanking, but he basically said that. An interesting thing, though, is like I mentioned the new ownership, how they've been willing to spend and everything. There have been some quotes that have come out, and I should know the guy's name, John Stanton. There we go. Or he's part of the ownership. Sometimes the things Stanton has said, he said stuff like basically where he wants the Mariners to win now, and it's like, I don't like that, but I think it's a lot better communication than the previous ownership group and management, and now that at least they're on the same page. And I think Stanton is thinking more like a fan, because he has come on like the local radio shows talk about, of course he's a fan of the Mariners because no duh, but like he sees it through the eyes of the general public fans, where he's like, I want to win now, of course. But then when it is brought up that tanking is helpful and everything, at least we hope it's helpful, that he's been semi-understanding. So that is something to keep an eye on, but I don't think it should be that big of a problem.
Now, Seattle fans, are they more on the side of tanking? I mean, you kind of mentioned with that quote there, obviously, that, they kind of want to win now. But for the most part, are Mariners fans kind of accepting, like, maybe to get better, this is something we have to do?
Yeah, and there's kind of thing where I listen to the local radio shows, and I know that maybe that's a very specific audience, but these local radio shows, like, they're good with like using their social media and stuff. And so sometimes you'll get like callers who call in and they're the loud minority who say, no, we want to win now. Let's go trade for Mike Trout. Let's go get George Springer. I'm like, I don't know why you're saying this, saying all this crazy stuff. But then you check like social media, like the majority of people are saying like, yeah, I understand this tanking is needed. It's going to help us, because if we try and win right now with the roster we have to deal with the Astros, the Yankees, the Twins. If we somehow make it to the World Series, we'd have to deal with like the Dodgers or the Nationals. Right. There's no way we can do it. So let's slowly build it. And I think the majority of Seattle fans realize that, I mean, we haven't sniffed the playoffs in a bajillion years. Let's not just, and I think we also have to understand that let's just not get to the one game wild card and just lose. Let's like actually build something that's sustainable, like Jerry Dipoto said. Right. And I hopefully cooler minds will prevail and that'll happen. But yeah, the majority of Seattle Mariner fans are understanding. I mean, they are kind of angry because it took us so long to do it, but we are understanding.
Well, that's good. I mean, a lot of times when you can have a fan base that's all for the most part has the same idea of, we don't want to tank, but we realize it's something that we probably are going to have to do to get better. I've always said, and too, in sports, the worst place to be is right in the middle. Yeah. Because you don't get any better. You either want to have a team that's built to be with the elites, like the Dodgers, the Astros, or you want to be towards the bottom. Well, you don't want to be towards the bottom, but you kind of have to be towards the bottom in order to get better. Obviously, with the Houston Astros thing, obviously the whole cheating thing, nonetheless, they won a World Series. But how did they do that? They had many years of bad teams to get those Carlos Correa, George Springer, to be able to have the assets to trade for a Garrett Cole or a Justin Verlander. So sometimes it's something that you have to do to get better. Heck, me being a Dolphins fan, that's what we're doing right now, But as much as it sucks and as much as a lot of losing and a lot of memes that be thrown at your team, it's just something that you have to do in order to get better.
Yep.
But, oh, well, you win some, you lose some. But in the case of the losing team, you lose a lot.
Yeah, dang right. I just saw these stats real quick. I just want to go back to last season. Team batting average, 237, second worst in Major League Baseball. Struck out 1,581 times, second worst in baseball. 132 errors, first worst in baseball. And that led to 95 unearned runs, which was also number one as being the worst. So, I mean, we are tanking. It's clearly showing.
Yeah. That's unfortunate. Well, it kind of humbles you a little bit because you remember the bad times to get to the better times. You always remember these times.
Yeah, that's the hope.
That's for sure. So Edgar Martinez, obviously not too far removed from being inducted into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Mariners fans, I'm assuming, were pretty ecstatic.
Yep.
What was the reasoning why it took him so long to finally get in?
The stuff I hear from like the old, as Pat McAfee, great Pat McAfee likes to say, the old white guys like to say is that he's a DH. He's not a position player. There's not much value there. But literally the award is named after him.
Yeah.
So even on that, like, he should be in. And finally, like, smarter people came and said, hey, let's look at how great his stats are compared to not just like DHs, just compared to like people hitting in general. And they realized, yeah, he should be in. And he got in, thank goodness. Well deserved. But man, it took way, way too long for him to get in.
You know, he was the David Ortiz before David Ortiz when it came to designated hitters. You know, he was the OG designated hitter. But so, and how excited, I mean, I can only imagine how excited Mariners fans and people in Washington were when they found that out.
Oh man, it was like, I remember listening to the local sports talk radio shows, and basically every single show was talking about it. There's this one show that's like the early show, like 6 a.m. just for an hour, 6 to 7. It was basically just all a bunch of Edgar Martinez highlights that were just played. It was awesome, and like stuff that he's talked about, and then like especially when he gave the speech. I know a lot of my friends who are Mariners fans took their time out of their day to at least check in or sneak out of work for a little bit and just peep on what's going on. Yeah, it was, and also for like organization not having a lot to cheer for. That's the closest thing to success we've had in a long time. So it's really awesome to see. It was well deserved.
So now Washington, maybe even Seattle more specifically, is it a big baseball town or are they more of a football town?
Honestly, I would say the Seahawks, but really like deep ingrained in the team is this baseball town, because like you see it like when, especially that season I keep referencing, like 2 years ago, when we were winning and we were going off, the Seattle and just the surrounding area was popping off with like Mariners stuff. People were saying, how about the Mariners? Like, hey, like in the checkout line at the store, talking about the Mariners. I'd hear it, gas station, you know. It was awesome. And I'm not saying, oh, it's just fair weather fans, but like when you really listen to, there are like deep ingrained fans who love the Mariners, and not, of course, we love the Seahawks.
Right.
We love the Sonics. Our college teams are pretty good, and we love our Seattle Storm, and of course, like for soccer, I know you're not a big soccer guy, but like the Sounders, like people always say that we have like the number one fan base. But I think just like really deep down, at the core of like a Seattle sports fan, like a true Seattle sports fan, is the Seattle Mariners. And the Seahawks, like overall, like the Seahawks, like the newer team, but like deep down, it's the Mariners. It's a Mariners town.
For sure. No, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. I know definitely out here in Colorado, it's a huge football town, and as much as I don't want to admit it, that's how it is. So it is really cool to see, though. that Seattle does kind of go more towards the baseball way. Nonetheless, passionate fans in every sport, which you don't get to see in a lot of states,
Yeah.
regardless of who's playing, which is huge.
Yeah.
So I guess an outlook now onto next season, this 2020 season that we're going to have coming up here shortly. Not a lot of expectations, obviously. We've kind of talked about that, not really expecting to do a whole lot. So if you were to make a prediction of, if you have a record, that's fine. If not, doesn't matter. Or maybe just a position, what place they're going to finish in. What would be your take?
Honestly, I would like to see us finish near the bottom of the league overall, just because that helps us in the long run with getting better players.
Right.
But I think just my biggest thing, and like Doetkott said, is just seeing improvement out of our young guys, because our September call-ups looked great. But let's see how they do over the course of the season. I mentioned J.P. Crawford at shortstop, another guy who came up was Shed Long, who's kind of our second baseman, but he can play some outfield. They started out really good, but then they hit that wall where guys who haven't been up at the major league level, you just get it because it's just a long season. But then they kind of rounded back into form at the end of the season when we brought up more people and we could rotate people in and out on different nights. So I'm hoping that the young guys keep on improving and that we keep building this winning, hardworking culture, because that's another thing too I've noticed with the young players. They're hungry, they want to win, and they're trying real hard, which I guess you could say about a lot of people, but sometimes the culture with the Mariners has been kind of iffy on that. Another thing I'm hoping is that we have pitchers who can do something, not necessarily that we can keep them, but contenders or fringe playoff teams. A big target at the trade deadline is getting more pitching, because you always need pitching. And that was a big thing with us last season. We had a bunch of, I mentioned the 36 relievers. I don't think we traded a single one of them for anything substantial. I hope that we can use these older guys, trade them for younger players, hopefully build up our minor league system. And my big thing is with Mitch Haniger, I love the guy. He's been great. He's super intense. I've seen interviews where he doesn't smile once. Not that he's being mean, but he's just so laser focused.
Yeah.
I hope he can get back from his injury and get back to his all-star form somewhat, or even get there. But with him being 29, and he is kind of injury prone, I don't honestly know how much longer of his prime that we have as the Mariners. And I don't know, maybe at the end of his prime, that's when we're just going to be getting all our young guys. So I'm hoping that we can trade him at the deadline and get something substantial back. Because I heard some rumors that maybe we were looking to trade him the year after he was an all-star, but we wanted to keep him because we were so close that year. But then, of course, unfortunately, his injury happened and his trade value sunk. And just for him personally, that's just an unfortunate situation. And again, I love Mitch, but he is on the older side of things, or getting to be on the older side of things. So I hope that we can trade him for a decent prospect, because we've traded for prospects, but they've been the 20th guy in a minor league system, or some random dude out of nowhere. So I'm hoping we could trade him for maybe a top 15 prospect.
For sure. Yeah, I feel that 100%. It's hard to get rid of those household names, those big name guys, just for how much they mean to the team. But sometimes you kind of have to cut the cord and get something while you can for them. Baseball, because you never know. So next year, then, is there one specific player, maybe a couple different players that you personally are really excited to watch and see how they play?
I think for me personally, one of my biggest guys is Kyle Lewis, who I just keep saying over and over. But the thing is, just the kid, he's big dude, 6'4", 210, but he's a great left fielder. He's got all the tools. He can hit for power. He's got speed. He's got a great arm, great glove. He was one of our first picks who we've got in a while, who people were saying this is a really solid guy. And unfortunately, his first year in the minors, he tore up his ACL. where he's come, and that's something where, oh man, is this gonna dampen him? Is he not gonna be as good as he is supposed to be? But man, he came up, battled through that. He came up and he hit really well last year, so I hope he does good over the entire season. And I guess another guy is Yusei Kikuchi, the Japanese pitcher who we signed last offseason. That was a surprise to me because I'm thinking, oh, okay, we actually went out and got someone. And usually with Japanese pitchers, they're supposed to be like, got great control, great command and everything. He didn't really have that for a majority of the season. But then at the end, he started showing some flashes. I remember he pitched I cannot remember if it was an 8-inning shutout or a complete game shutout. It was such a great dominant performance. So he showed some flashes. And so I'm hoping that's another guy too, because he's kind of younger. Hopefully that's another guy too we can build and he can become a great. I don't think he has got ace stuff, but he can be another solid number 3, number 4 guy to fill out the back end of the rotation. And who knows, maybe that's another guy too who, I mean, I'd love to keep him, but maybe that's another guy too who we can trade for solid prospects. Because he did show some promise at the end of the year, and when he was in Japan, he was really, really good. So those are 2 players, and I guess just one more thing, just again watching what management does, like what kind of trades, because I think like most of Major League Baseball, I see say, oh, what's Jerry Dipoto going to do at the trade deadline? Because he always comes up with like random trades out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So those are 3 things I guess I'm looking forward to.
For sure. So I guess now it gets into the maybe the funner part of the podcast where I get to do a little bit of rapid fire things for you.
All right.
So I guess the first question is, who is your all-time favorite Mariners player?
Oof. I mentioned Ichiro, and I did love how he came back at the end and he was more warm and more like friendly, because when he was first with the Mariners, he was kind of cold, not really that inviting. Not that he was a bad guy. It's just kind of how he is. He's just kind of a quiet guy, but then he kind of warmed up. But I think randomly my all-time favorite, and it's not Felix Hernandez, because I don't like that. And I know that surprised some people. I saw a look in your face. I'll just go off on Felix real quick. Top pitcher, maybe number 1 while he was at his prime in all of Major League Baseball. But the thing is, he didn't learn how to pitch. He was more of a thrower. Like, he had a great fastball, and he had like this cutter that was so nasty because it just played off the fastball. But then as soon as his speed went and he was just throwing, his top was like 91 for all of his pitches, people are like, okay, I know I can just lay off on this cutter that he has. When he actually tries to throw a fastball, I'll just clobber it. And then it's like CC Sabathia. He was the guy who Mariners fans always point to, like, how come Felix can't pitch like him? Well, CC actually went and learned how to pitch. Felix never did. And he kind of did this last season. Kind of seemed like he was willing to, but he still had the mindset that he was King Felix when he was nowhere near that. So I still love Felix for what he did, but he's not my favorite. I honestly have to say, random dude who's my favorite Mariners player of all time, Franklin Gutierrez was our Gold Glove center fielder, and unfortunately he just got hurt all the time. But I swear, like, every single time I watched him, he either hit a home run that game to deep center field. That was like OG Safeco Field. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Not even a pitch. That was beyond a pitcher's park. That was any fly ball was basically an out at the warning track. That was like deep center field home runs, or he'd make a Gold Glove catch, like ridiculous, insane stuff. That'd be like number 1 on Web Gems that night. And I think I just liked him too because he was just kind of a humble guy. He was a cool guy, and unfortunately, just like injuries, and also he had like a really bad, like, I don't remember the exact thing, but it was like basically like a stomach bug or something that, like, he was like really, really, really sick. I don't remember if it was like deathly sick, but like he lost a lot of weight and stuff. So,
wow.
But yeah, that's just my random favorite Mariners player, Franklin Gutierrez.
I like that, and even before I knew you, and before I went to Bethany and actually, met you and stuff, before I knew you're a Mariners fan, I remember here out in Colorado, you're 100% right. It seemed like almost daily there was some kind of Franklin Gutierrez highlight. Like you
Yeah.
said, whether if it was robbing someone of a home run. I mean, that guy was one of the best defensive outfielders that I think I have seen.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really good defensive outfielders, and he has got to be towards the top. I like Franklin Gutierrez. That's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe who is your all-time favorite Major League Baseball player? Now, it can be Franklin Gutierrez. I'm not going to take him out if it is, but maybe there's somebody else that you like, all time.
All time. I mean, there's a lot, but I'm gonna stick to like easy. The easy thing for me to say is like Ken Griffey Jr. But I honestly only saw like the tail end of his career. Our all time, is honestly it has to be Juan Soto, just because that dude is brash.
Wow.
That dude does not care about you. The ball grabbing stuff he does, the little like crouch in the box when it's a ball, the little shuffle he has. His defense has improved greatly, and just the fact that like I watched the video how he basically was only in the minor leagues for like 3 months.
Yeah.
And he came up and has still been raking. And then the fact that went out and just killed it and then got to the playoffs, didn't let up, got to the World Series, didn't let up. And again, like some people don't like him because they say he's cocky. I kind of get that, but I kind of like that. I
love
like that. That's why I like Baker Mayfield, Cam Newton. I like those kind of guys who like talk a little bit, because for the most part they can back it up, and especially Juan Soto. He's just got that look in his eye, it's just like, oh man, that's a winner right there. That's cool. He's got swag.
I'm a fan of that. A current player hasn't been around a whole lot, but hey, that's perfectly fine here. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so now is there a favorite Seattle Mariner memory that you have, like all-time number one?
Oh, all-time number one. Oh man. Well, I remember. I have to say two.
Okay, that's fine.
Pick one. So the first one I remember, it was like a super late night, summer night, and we were playing the Yankees. Everyone hates the Yankees, and I believe my grandma was watching this with me. I can't remember for sure, but we're playing the Yankees. We're down 1 run, bottom of the ninth. Guy hits a double off the wall, and then I remember Speedy Michael Saunders at second base to pinch run to be the tying run, and he was coming up. Ichiro versus Mariano Rivera. I was like, oh great, Ichiro's gonna. This is the showdown we want to see. This is gonna be awesome. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe he gets a single, and Saunders is super fast. Still one of the fastest players I've ever seen. Was he gonna come around and score? Because Ichiro, he could just slap the ball wherever he wanted to. He hit a deep home run to right field, and I remember Rivera walking off just like, I gave up a home run to Ichiro, and like people are going insane. And like that's kind of thing too. Like that's the moment where people point to like, man, people always talk about how Ichiro, if he wanted to, he could have hit a bunch of home runs, but he wanted to hit for average. That's one moment where I kind of believe them, because it literally, he's just clobbered that pitch. This dude who weighs like 150 pounds soaking wet just hit a deep home run off of Mariano Rivera. So that was awesome. Oh, and I guess the other one too is Felix's perfect game. I actually didn't see it with my eyes. I heard it on the radio because I was chilling on my front porch, because we don't have AC in our house and it doesn't get extremely hot in Washington. But I guess I'm like a warm-blooded person. Like I like my room at like 61 degrees. So it was like 78 degrees in our house. I was outside in the front porch in the shade, drinking some crappy handmade iced tea that I made. But I was listening on the radio, and it was like the 5th inning when I started listening, and then it got to the 6th inning. And about the 7th inning, they said, and I love our play-by-play guy, Rick Riz. He said, yeah, Felix, no runs, no hits, no errors. I'm like, wait a second. Is this what I think it is? And it's going on, nervous. And he finally got the strike 3 called. I'm like, let's go, perfect game. It was super. And I did one of those things as a superstitious sports fans where I literally like didn't move.
Yep.
I didn't lift my cup to my mouth. The ice was far melted. The iced tea was warm. And as soon as they pitched it, I like gently put my drink down so I could celebrate properly. And then I ran around my front yard, and I was running around the house. And my dad thought I was crazy, and he still thinks I'm crazy. But that was an awesome moment there too.
Oh, that's super cool. That is, I'm with you on the superstitious thing, though. I don't know if you remember when the Rockies were playing the Cubs in the wild card game a
Yep,
couple years
yep,
ago.
yep,
Yeah, I
yep,
sat in the same spot for the entire game.
yep,
Did not go to the bathroom the entire time
yep,
because the Rockies pitching was holding up, and then eventually we ended up winning.
yep. And I would also like to say I was part of that win because I like stayed in there to watch a little bit, and then I believe it was like the Rockies were pitching, they gave up a hit. And I said, okay, Lucas, if something bad happens, do you want me to leave? He said, sure. Like I think they gave him another hit, and I immediately said, bye, Lucas, and I just like left the room.
You did. So, ladies and gentlemen, all Colorado Rockies fans, you can thank this man right here,
Yep.
Josh Mailing, for the Rockies beating the Cubs because he
W,
left
baby.
the room when stuff started to go bad, and then they
Yep.
won. So,
Yep.
congratulations. Good job. You helped the Rockies.
Man, I did what I could. I did what I could.
That's awesome. And then finally, the last question, I guess, rapid fire one, more for me, I guess. Which one is more egregious? Derek Jeter not getting unanimous or Larry Walker waiting 10 years to get into the Hall of Fame?
Easy, Larry Walker not getting in because I don't care. Because Derek Jeter, that was what? Because okay, technically yes, he should deserve to be unanimous. And now people are like, well, yeah, Ken Griffey Jr. didn't get in. But I think my biggest thing is like, think about it. Mariano Rivera was the first unanimous player. Think of how many. Babe Ruth wasn't unanimous. Ted Williams wasn't unanimous. I could keep going, but like Hank Aaron wasn't unanimous. All those all-time greats weren't unanimous. Derek Jeter doesn't deserve it, and also, I was very happy. I saw that news. I was literally fist pumping and high fiving people who had no idea what was going on. I also hate the Yankees, so it was just a great scene.
For sure.
And also
Well,
again, like Larry Walker, like he's deserved it for a long time, and he finally got in. So I was happy, like for you as a Rockies fan, just Larry Walker, and for like other people like Larry Walker who like on first glance, like the older people like, oh, I don't know if he gets in, but like the people like actually look, it's like, hey, put him in, please.
yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for agreeing with me on that. But
yeah.
So that's kind of all. That's all. Well, it's not all the time we have. It's not like we have a time segment here or anything. But that's all that we had to talk about with the Mariners. Yeah. Is there any final comments? Any final things you wanted to say about the Mariners, or maybe just in sports in general?
I'd just like to say that the Mariners. I know we are now like the longest running American organization to not make the playoffs. But we've got some talent building. Hopefully in a few years, it's going to be like how the Seahawks kind of came out of nowhere for the rest of the country. But for like us Mariner fans, we've been seeing it building. Hopefully we can come up and surprise people and hopefully, win a World Series. Or at the very least, like make the playoffs. Let me just say that, let's make the playoffs first before we think of the World Series. But hey, once you're in, you know how it is. Once you're in, you never know what happens.
Oh, you never know. Well, again, thank you for joining us, Josh. Where can they reach you on Twitter? Where can they find you at as you got your Seattle Mariners hat on?
Yeah. All right. So I'm at Josh_Ray_A, Sports by JR. I have this like little sports blog that I kind of keep up with, but college, is kind of killing me. So I got to do that stuff. But mostly it's been football stuff. I will get into basketball, baseball, hopefully, as I have more free time and stuff, especially like this summer. Hopefully keep that going. I also have another random podcast. It's called, what's it called? Yikes. I'm well prepared. I was like, this isn't organized. I think I've like tweeted out a few things. Oh wait, no, that was on my burner account. I'm going to have to tweet out on my main account, but like, it's mostly been sports stuff, but I also like will have like random podcasts with like, so one thing, I talked with a good friend of mine, and you know him too, Ben Twite, talked about potential college quarterbacks to be drafted in this upcoming NFL draft, and I also pulled up an old interview about aphantasia, not sports related at all. This random thing. I go give it a listen if I could find it, and probably retweet on my main account and not my burner account. But yeah, I don't know what my burner account is. I won't be telling people because it's a burner for a reason.
Right, exactly. Kevin Durant has one. You can have one too.
Exactly.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Like I said, Josh, thank you for joining. It was a great time. Definitely welcome back anytime that you would like to be on it. Just let us know.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm Lucas Dorton. You can find me at Twitter at Lucas_Dorton, capital L, capital D. If you would like to find Mr. Doetkott, you can find him at Doetkott or Doetkott, whichever is easier for you to pronounce and spell. Definitely share us, get our name out there. Comment, let us know what you liked, let us know what you didn't like. Mr. Mailing is definitely one of those two. I'm not going to say which one, but always keeping us in check, letting us know things we messed up, but we definitely appreciate it for sure. But nonetheless, definitely share, let us know what you think. But yeah, get ready for another episode, hopefully coming out soon. And we'll be talking about a lot of different stuff. So I am Lucas Dorton. As for myself and Joshua Milling, we are out.